Why Yandere Simulator? Why is that the comparison you made?
I was like clenching my ass cheeks hoping that you didn't say this.
You enjoyed Romeo and Juliet more than Hamlet?
Sarah J. Maas fun.
My brain is like racing now.
Oh no, Alex!
Good job, me. I really don't know how to speak.
Oh God! Can't do this. This is my guilty boner. Family listens to these. Never mind.
Don't you me?
You totally believe you, Dean.
That's still bigger than a city.
It's more than one planet.
Today we're going to be talking about a subject that I'm pretty sure either a lot of us have been through already or I think most of us haven't been through yet, and that is publishing. Specifically, we wanted to talk about traditional versus self-publishing. And so like guys, like when you've been writing your own respective works, have you guys considered publishing like along the way, or has it just been something else? Like, so basically, like, have you guys considered publishing while you've been writing?
Yeah, at some point I eventually it comes up.
Yeah, it was, I mean, like, the first time I, like, finished, like, a novel project, it was for a class, like a creative writing class, where the end goal was to send it off to submit it to publishing. So I had to think about that in that regard. And then, of course, I mean, if you have goals of becoming a writer, that's something you're going to end up thinking about at some point.
Yeah.
People can't read your work if it hasn't been published.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's ultimately the end goal for a lot of people nowadays. Like, I think I know what I want to talk about next. So, Gabe, before we move on, like, what do you have to say on like thinking about publishing?
I mean, yeah, I've definitely wanted to publish. It really just comes down to a matter of like finding, for me at least, it comes down to a matter of like finding like publishers who I think would be appropriate for the work that I'm working on, and then actually submitting it, which I haven't done because nothing I've worked on is ever finished.
Mood.
I think at some point, and like the reason why I wanted to talk about tonight was that at some point I've considered self-publishing, which it's like, it was daunting for me personally, and I'll get your guys' opinion on it in a second, but like it felt like definitely like I didn't have to worry about like, you know, time to wait. I didn't have to worry about like, you know, possible feedback or like possible like rejection letters or anything. Like I could just like send off my work, publish it then and there. And I know it's not that easy, but like it's definitely a lot more streamlined getting a book published through self-publishing. But like then I consider, you know, I have to get the cover art myself. I have to do all of the advertising by myself. I have to do all this and that on my own. It's like, do I really want to put myself through that, you know? So, and especially for like a novel, like that'd be difficult. Like if you guys were to, or I guess Gabe, I'll get your input on it first. So like if you were to, like, have you considered self-publishing?
It's crossed my mind from time to time. I think one of the hang-ups I have with self-publishing is aside from like what you mentioned with marketing and having to do all the stuff that a publishing house would handle on your own. I think getting it out there is probably a lot harder. I know a lot of self-published authors basically do it like all through Amazon, through like Kindle and audiobooks mostly. When you're not working with a publishing house, you run a higher risk. Like, I mean, this is something that you just know as a writer. If you work with other writers, is that if you're not working with like multiple people and it's basically just you, then you stand a larger chance of like shipping your book out with like gaping grammar errors and like writing issues and like things that would have been cleared up in a longer editing process with more input from other voices that you might get from a publishing house. So that's also something that like you just have to worry about, because like even if you're very confident that you're like a good editor, you're not going to be as good an editor as someone else is going to be reading your stuff.
Like doing my own cover art would be so daunting. Like Alex, like you draw too. Like imagine trying to do your own cover art for your own book.
I've thought about it.
Oh really?
Like for my one project, the crown. Yeah, for like, well, okay, I actually, in one of my many world building folders, I have
many.
like this whole, yeah, one of many. I have like a bunch of, like I used to actually design covers for my book ideas. Like I have like several versions for the Diamond Dagger, because I like drew like a set, and then I drew them years later. So I have like several versions of that. I have one for like I have designed covers for like a ton of stories, most of which I'll never write. But like that was a thing I used to do. Like instead of writing books, I just like design covers.
I guess for like a romance novel or something, like I'd assume it'd be pretty simple to design like cover art that way. But if you want like if you're writing a fantasy story, and I think that's why I'm a little bit like I was a bit hesitant on self-publishing cover art in the first place, was because like I was the one who had to design it. Like that would mean I would have to reach out to someone, pay out of pocket, wait how many days until their commission list waits up, and then make sure that the dimensions are all proper, because like people who can do that for you and you don't have to pay out of pocket, then like I bet it'd be a lot easier. And actually, segueing into something that Gabe said beforehand on editing, I feel like that's probably the most important thing that has kind of kept me away from self-publishing personally, because like you guys know me, like I have put in my work on our Discord like how many times asking for like input on it or something. Like I want to make sure that everything that I put out, even if it's hindering the actual progression of the story, I want to make sure everything is as clean as possible, because like I have entertained the idea of like self-publishing and completely bypassing like the need for a professional editor, which I don't think you should do. Like I feel like you definitely do need like a professional editor there for you, because they're going to be finding things that like certainly I can't find by myself, right? Because it's really hard to edit your own work, and at the same time like I can get my story vetted through you guys, but there's things that you might miss, or there's things that like you guys say that kind of clash or something. Like I never want to put out something that hasn't been edited to its best. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So like yeah, you can definitely like send it over to like Kindle or Amazon or whatever and get it instantly published, but at the same time like there'd be like how many errors in that piece, right? Like in a single chapter alone there could be like how many spelling errors, style errors, like all of that stuff, right? And that's not to say that traditional houses are like completely scot-free of this, like, and I'll get to a specific example when we talk more about traditional publishing, but like I think that's just a fear of mine. And I think, yeah, that's pretty much talking about self-publishing, which, as we've kind of attested, is difficult. Would you guys, I guess as an overall kind of close to this section, like, would you guys do it?
It depends.
Yeah, I think it depends. I wouldn't be opposed to it for sure, because like I said, there's a lot. Like probably I have one book series I can think of off the top of my head that I'm pretty sure was self-published. That's one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah.
So
I think personally, knowing how much freedom it gives me, but at the same time how much it like limits, or not limits, how much it'll take out of me, I think I'd personally rather just stick with traditional publishing. So I'd rather I just wait for the long queue times, maybe get an agent.
Can we talk about the freedom though? Actually, I feel like that's a really important point.
Yeah. Okay. So not a close on the section yet.
Sorry.
Okay. No, it's fine.
But like I said, I've read a lot. A lot of the self-published books that I've been pointed towards tend to be more diverse. Like they'll have like queer characters, and they'll have more like people of color, and like more like physically disabled characters and stuff. Which I feel like in that regard, self-publishing is a lot more free, and because I feel like a lot of mainstream books don't really dare to go into those areas as much. And I feel like if you're looking for own voices types of stories, it's going to be a lot harder to find traditionally published ones than self-published ones.
That's fair. Like if AO3 and fan fiction sites are anything to go by, like there's so much creativity that goes into what they say, right? Like they have a lot more, like you can definitely find a lot more stories that have, you know, shipping completely wild characters and all this stuff, right?
Yeah, and I've read like plenty of fics where like they just like make one of the characters blind, or one of them's like in a wheelchair, or one of them is trans, that you wouldn't find in like the actual story. And I think like those people, if they do write, some of them do write their own original work. And I feel like you're more likely to find those types of characters in self-publishing books. Like I can think of very few trans characters.
I'll be right back, Alex, but just keep talking.
I can think of very few trans characters in traditionally published books. I can think of even fewer like disabled characters, and like the characters of color is becoming a bigger thing finally, about time. But there's still a lot fewer than in traditionally published works than I've seen in self-published works, just personally in my own experience.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely true. I think that's something that I've heard from a lot of like publishing houses. That happens a lot in a lot of publishing houses. They'll either tone down like elements of diversity to sort of I don't know, make it like sell more, I guess. It's like just as like a we want to make this sell more. We don't want people who will see this and like think it's political or something, which
yeah, because people see a gay character in a book and they're like, "Oh, you're just trying to push the gay agenda." And
I'm being forced to read gay propaganda.
Yeah, stop shoving your gay characters down people's throats. Like, first of all, you're the one who picked up the book.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. That goes for anything really. I've heard that so much about like movies and video games and stuff, and it's like, bro, just turn your TV off, put the book down. You are not
Sorry, finish.
This is not Clockwork Orange. Your eyes are not being forced open while you're bolted to the seat and forced to see the gay. Like you're
so menacing.
You're actively choosing to engage with media and then getting mad when like gay people are in it. That's so ridiculous.
Yeah. In
the wise words of fanfiction.net from like the mid 2000s, don't read. I guess so moving on to traditional publishing, like I said, personally that's the route that I'm probably going to be going with anyway, even though I know that me having LGBTQ plus characters, especially like because I'm planning a whole series and a whole lot of them will be featuring that, like I'm hoping that my ideas kind of stick, and that's why it's kind of hard for me to look at different publishing companies, like which one would really help best push my work out there, because the publishing companies that I've looked at are Bloomsbury, which published the Throne of Glass books, Harper, which published the Shatter Me books, Penguin, which has pretty much a good global outreach on publishing in general, and like I'm not sure, like I haven't really looked at any more of them, to be honest, but it'd be hard for me, or at least like I'm imagining it'd be hard for me to find like a good publishing house that would pretty much let me keep most of my ideas, if not like,
like obviously I want the proper, like I want good feedback and like, what to fix and what to keep, but like that's I guess its own obstacle too, like when it comes to
you want it to be your
publishing.
story.
Yeah, because I'd imagine like with with making a movie or with making a video game, there's going to be so many people trying to weigh in on your single story, right? Like there's been how many changes along a video game's story. It's like, oh, this doesn't work, this is like, you could do this instead. Like, to open up the discussion, like what do you guys think on traditional publishing? Like, I guess like in respects to your own work and like just kind of like the process behind it, what little of it we know really.
Well, as far as my horror short stories go, because that's been more of my like long-term project, I guess. It's just something that I'm doing a lot more than writing my long-term projects. I just write like short stories every now and then. For that, I've looked into a lot of like late night horror podcasts and stuff. That's been something that's been on my mind as like as a more traditional publishing, like maybe not like, and a good way to get it out there, like the one I was recommended to specifically to publish was the No Sleep podcast, which is it's a horror fiction podcast. You submit your short horror story and then they'll read it out on their podcast, and
that's really
well
cool.
I mean, if they accept it, it's not just like they'll just read anything, but if they accept it, they read it on the podcast. You get paid for the submission, and that's been something that I've been looking into, because I think that would be probably a podcast, like if you're a short story writer, like submitting to a fiction podcast is probably a smart way to go about it.
Yeah, audiobooks do have a market, and like I've read or I've listened to creative podcasts myself, and it definitely is a really interesting market. That's really cool, dude. Alex, how about you? I guess like any kind of experience with like traditional publishing?
None at all. Like I've like done like the bare minimum of research for it. Like I said, like I had to do that for a creative writing class in high school. And I mean, it always just intimidates me so much, because there's so much to do. Because like, they expect like in the class I did, we had to like write a cover letter. We had to have like the first 3 chapters, I think, fully written, edited to like look really nicely, and then a summary of the rest of the story. And then my teacher also recommended having the rest of the story complete, so that if they like email you back the next day and are like, we want to see the rest of it, you can just send it off right away.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I've been told too.
Yeah, so it sounds like a lot of work, and if you've got anxiety, it doesn't make it any easier.
Yeah. That's a good point, actually. The first 3 chapters or the first 5 pages, pretty much, like, it's so important, those first few pages, to market, or like those are like the keys to kind of making sure everything else is going swimmingly. Like, you want, like, obviously, like in terms of a good story, like you want to have like the first 3 chapters set up a good fair bit, but in terms of publishing, like from what I know about it, like they are super important to making sure that your thing doesn't get rejected, and that scares me.
If they're not interested in like the first couple pages, then they're not going to read the rest of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is something I'm really scared about when it comes to that, because I know that I tend to write like really slow openings. Like I don't tend to like make my openings like really action packed. I like to have a lot of build up.
Yeah.
Which is like a style that I prefer reading as well, a lot of times. But I feel like that's a lot harder to grab attention with.
Yeah, that's kind of my style too. Like I have like I doubt it'll change anytime soon, so I'm not really going to talk about the opening to my book, but I think it gravitates more towards a build up rather than opening on like a lot of good action and everything. Like it opens up on like the first three chapters open up with a lot of world building and setting up things instead of like high action and like like tense dialogue and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But like that's how my style goes. So I need to make sure on my end that like it all builds up properly. Otherwise, there's not going to be any investment in it. Pretty much, like if those 3 chapters, to my extent at least, if they aren't like luscious and gorgeous with their world building, to like especially with how picky I am, like if I'm not content with it, then odds are it probably won't even stand a chance compared to someone else, right? Or compared to an editor who's looking at your work and thinking like, yeah, this feels kind of half-assed. Like I don't want that personally.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty much like making a first impression, right? You only get one chance at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, but I guess like to all of this though, like traditional publishing does come with a lot more benefits than, well, I say a lot more benefits, like the benefits being that, they take care of the marketing, they take care of kind of establishing your credibility, and like I guess just like finding your worth, pretty much. Like they really do know how to like pick and choose which ones are the really good ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess in that aspect, like it'd probably be a lot more comfortable for me at least. And I'll pose the same question, like how, like would going the traditional route kind of make you feel a lot safer, kind of worrying about your work getting published? Like would you feel like there's less of a risk of it like finding an audience, pretty much?
I honestly don't know.
For me, if we mean finding an audience specifically, I feel like I don't even know what I want to say. Like I have thoughts in my head, but they're not coherent. But I mean, like, if you have a book published with like a reputable publishing group, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like chances are it's gonna pop up alongside another book that's like vaguely similar to your book, and then if someone liked that other book, then they'll go read your book because it's similar.
Yeah.
I feel like in that way, if you have like a traditionally published book, if it's in bookstores, people are gonna see it when they go to bookstores. People are gonna see it when they're looking for books online. People are gonna be able to like look at the cover and pick it up, because a lot of self-published books don't get like physical copies, and if they do get physical copies, they don't often get into like big bookstores and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Like a lot of self stuff that I've read is Kindle exclusive, or like ebook exclusive specifically, not Kindle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas if it's traditionally published, people are going to be able to go into bookstores, and as we talked about earlier, when going into bookstores is like the best way to find one of the best ways to find books.
Yeah, that's still like I guess especially for our age group at least, like there's still a lot of people that prefer paper books over like e-readers, which personally makes me really happy, because then it shows that like that's still the benchmark, and that's still what the end goal is for a lot of people, right? Is to get their books on shelves, right? Because you could easily pick up a cheap book on Amazon, but the thing is, like, I don't read ebooks for the sole reason being that it hurts my eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess like there's also the thing of like just having the feeling of a book. Like there's a whole experience when you're reading it on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a thing that like so many people share. Like Jessica, she still reads paper books. My friends who don't read as much as I do, or who they aren't as they don't do a lot of like creative stuff as much as I do, like they read paper books. Like paper I guess like paper publishing and traditional publishing is still like the ultimate goal for a lot of people, which is interesting to me, and that's why like I guess that's why I wanted to talk about it.
I mean, okay, think about it. How cool would it be to have a copy of your book on your bookshelf? I mean, like
Yeah.
when I finished my NaNoWriMo novel for the first time, I got 2 copies of it printed out, and I have like a physical copy of that terrible, horrible novel sitting on my bookshelf. And like I said, it's terrible, horrible, incoherent mess, but it's still really cool to just like have a physical copy of something I wrote.
Yeah. Like that's my goal too. And if you guys can hear stuff that's happening in the background, I'm sorry, but like that's been my goal, I think, ever since I've taken writing a lot more seriously. Like I've wanted to have paper copies of my book on my bookshelf. There's like I could probably do it myself at like a Staples or something, but it's just not going to be the same, right? Like I want
trust
to.
me, it's so cool to like
Yeah.
get mail and you open it and it's like your book. Ugh,
Yeah,
the satisfaction.
yeah, and I feel like that's probably why. Like, again, I can't speak for everyone in our group, at least, or probably everyone in general, but like having that satisfaction of seeing your book professionally published, regardless of whichever company, like that's still ultimately what we all want, right? Like,
Yeah.
like we don't expect to, like I personally don't expect to be publishing the next Hunger Games or, you know, Shatter Me books or the Throne of Glass books. I don't expect that kind of attention, but I do.
I don't even think I want that kind of attention. That would suck.
Yeah, like I just want to know that my book has started off as an idea and has finally come this far, right? Because my book personally has been like 5 years and counting, so like it's like I'm in no rush to finish it, but at the same time, like when it's on a bookshelf and there's like, you know, and there are like I guess like 16 to 24-year-olds looking at it and picking it up, like that'll make me really happy.
Yeah.
It'd be like, hey, thanks for giving this book a chance. Like I definitely want to be the kind of like traditionally published author that like doesn't just do like book tours and shit. Like I want to like go into different like bookstores, sign my own book so that like someone who buys it gets a little treat or something.
Yeah.
Like have you guys thought about that? Like how
Mm-hmm.
like
yeah.
I guess
I've always thought it would
thing
be
too.
super surreal to see, like, even just like if I was like in a line in chapters and I saw the person ahead of me like was paying for my book, that would be just extremely fucking surreal. I'd trip the fuck out. I probably wouldn't even say anything. I wouldn't try to draw attention to it, but like silently, I'd be like, "Dude, holy fuck!"
Yeah, I feel
This
like
man,
like 10 to 20 years from now, personally, like I feel like that feeling of someone picking up my book would never change.
yeah,
Like
Like-
Gabe, yeah, exactly. Like how you feel about like, oh, someone's got a copy of my book. Like for me personally, I
Bro.
don't think that would ever change. Like ever.
yeah. If I walked into chapters and I saw someone was like, I'd be like, "Bro, this man's just paying $20 for my elaborate shit post where I nut about shonen anime for 700 pages."
That's a good one. All right, well, that's that's the standard I'm holding up to you. That's your first fucking book, dude. That better be, or else I swear to God.
No, genuinely, Gabe, are you referencing like a specific project with that?
Skybuster.
Really?
I don't think Skybuster is going to be my first. I don't think Skybuster is going to be my first published book, but it. I mean, Dean, you've read it. The whole thing's basically just me screaming about shonen tropes and how much I love them.
Yeah,
And
it's a great thing. Everyone who's listening, it's a very good thing. I hope everyone gets the chance to read it at some point. But like, yeah, like as a published author too, like I've entertained that idea so many times. Like, and I don't think I would even get those ideas if I self-published. Like, I definitely think like traditional like I would like in my daydreams, I was always like signed to Bloomsbury or signed to Harper or something, right? Like I always imagined that, you know, I've imagined doing the book tours and everything, but in my own way, I'd be like, you know, giving everyone hugs and like signing every single autographed copy, even though it's like whatever, right?